I'd like to call to order the meeting of the school committee for Monday, December 2nd. Mrs. Kennedy, would you kindly call the roll?
Mr. Menon?
Present.
Mr. Cole?
Here.
Ms. Sweeney?
Present.
Mayor Holliday?
Present.
Mr. Decanter?
Here.
Ms. McCarthy?
Here.
Mr. Keon?
Present.
Thank you. Could we stand, please, to say the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The mission of the Newburyport Public Schools. The Newburyport Public Schools prepare students to live successfully and meaningfully in the community and the world. We teach them to collaborate, to think creatively and critically, and to communicate effectively. Our schools are safe and inclusive settings, academically rigorous with high standards for comprehensive curricula and high expectations for student and staff behavior, growth, and performance. We actively promote the health and wellness of all our students. We engage the entire community in the education process.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
May I remind school committee members to turn their phones off? Mr. Keown, do we have warrants this evening?
Yes, we do.
Please.
I move that the following name bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $268,425.97 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I move that the following name bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate to $63,057.80 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second. Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We had late minutes that we received this afternoon, so I'm not going to ask you to take a look at those this evening. We'll do 2 sets of minutes the next time. I'd like to now turn this portion of the meeting over to Superintendent Vaccaro.
Okay. It gives me great pleasure. I'm going to ask Mr. Parent to come up and join me. And
That gives you great pleasure.
it gives me great pleasure. It does. That gives me great pleasure too. It gives me great pleasure to have the opportunity to
Public comment.
Superintendent's Award up at the top.
She's going to,
That's at the top?
Yeah,
Sorry,
it's very top.
thank you.
my mistake.
To be able to recognize a senior at Newburyport High School for her academic excellence. And I learned a little bit about Kelly Conway when I was researching for this. And Kelly has a transcript that I believe there's no letter on it below A, and just excels at so many different things, and is, from what I have been told, and all around, I guess the best way to put it is just a great kid. And it is an honor for me to be able to honor her with the Superintendent's Award. Anything you want to add?
Why don't we have them, why don't we
Kelly
have
and her parents,
Kelly
if
and
you'd
her
like to
parents come on up.
Come on.
Fantastic student. When we put the word out to the staff, her name kept coming back from teachers, counselors, everybody in the school. She's done a fantastic job. She represents Newburyport High School at the highest level, and we'll be sad that she'll be leaving, but I think we're hoping we've got that early decision to Stanford, and she can continue with great things.
Nice.
In the future.
Congratulations. Dad. Yeah, why don't you two go too?
Just
Hold on.
just hit this. Which button? This one? Yeah.
Oh, Kennedy.
This one?
It's on top.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's all right.
Sorry. My
There you go. Nice.
Okay, I hope that worked. Yes.
One more.
One more here too, we can put up on the website. Okay.
Kelly, congratulations.
Thanks very much.
Congratulations. Wonderful.
That's awesome.
Stanford.
It's always a nice way to start off.
Yes. Stanford.
You should see the school she's in.
How are we paying for that?
That's number one. So
That's awesome. That's great. That's great.
she finds out this is December 14th, so the next 2 weeks are
Oh,
pins
she
and needles.
doesn't know yet.
So, pins and needles.
Moving on, this brings us to our first session of public comment, which is the time when the audience members can address this committee. We would ask you to step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comment to 2 minutes or less. Is there any public comment at this time? Yes.
Ralph Orlando, 4 William Hall Drive. So unfortunately, I saw a lot of the city councilors here, and I guess there was some sort of meeting, and unfortunately, I can't get here at 5:30. I'm sure it dealt with the budget, and I want to say a few things about that. I think the citizens of Newburyport are entitled to know how we got to this $750,000 deficit, what the plans are to get out of it, and how we're going to prevent it from happening again. There also seems to have appeared some extra money that all of a sudden miraculously appeared, and I think an explanation of where that came from is justifiable to the citizens. This is a significant problem, and I'm hoping that what you discussed here earlier will be presented to the school committee at large. The other thing I want to call your attention to is the school building committee. I alluded to the fact a little while ago about I feel responsible for what's going on in the construction of those buildings, and I think everyone on this committee equally so. There's a few things that you don't know when you don't sit there, and I would encourage some of you to sit there and understand what's going on. I want to thank Mr. Keown for his representation. He's leaving. I would hope that the school committee sees fit to put someone in that position who's had some experience over the last year and a half that we've been going through all the permutations and discussions at that school committee meeting. Some of the things I'd like to call your attention to that hopefully will come up in that meeting tonight is that there are a few things that I have continued concerns over. I alluded to one. I think each and every one of you need to take a very hard look at the technology budget. What is being purchased? Be sure that's what you think our students need. I have some concerns about it that I'll share with you if you wish. We all know about the designer tile. Well, a couple of other things have come up, and I'm hoping that someone will present them this evening to give their side of the story. We're now replacing screens. We go out and buy new windows. The screens come in. We don't like the way the screens look. We order to replace the screens. The amphitheater that you approved, and I'm all for one for dealing with the emotionalism and the personal issues at large. You approved the transfer of that. It's going to be, the bid came out at $45,000 to move it. And at the meeting, the principal at that school feels that the particular device is unsafe for the children at that school. Yet you voted to move that. You got to get your facts. You got to know the answers. And that's why it's important for each and every one of you to know what's going on at that building committee. So take a look at what's out there. We're spending lots of money. And then I'm also going to toss out there 3 other things that were very highly touted last year at the end of school committee. And I think you need to take a look at them again as we move forward. The first is science is at the high school. The second deals with school councils. And the third thing that I'd like to call your attention to is a resurgence of a discussion, and I know times are tough, but a resurgence of the discussion that breaks down the walls of this school building and gets our students out into the community in some sort of place-based education type of format. Those were 3 highly important issues that we had talked about at the end of last year, and I haven't heard one of them brought up again. in addition to the formation of the committee that was to deal with student performance, students' achievement, and accountability. I think we need one of those desperately in this district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any further public comment at this time? Hearing none, we're going to move on to Julia Bradley, reporting as our Newburyport High School rep. Hi, Julia.
Hello.
What's up?
Base Fest was canceled. Not enough people bought tickets beforehand.
What was?
Base Fest. Like a step dance. So we're planning to reschedule sometime in March. Student Advisory Council is also planning a Toys for Tots drive for the upcoming Christmas holiday. Seniors won Color Day. The freshmen got second place. The juniors got third, and the sophomores finished last. Winter sports started today. Basketball in the gym, you can probably hear it, and then hockey and track also started today. The next Poetry Soup at the Kelly School is December 4th. There is an early release day on December 5th. December 10th is the NHS Winter Concert. And then finally on December 13th is the Newburyport Youth Services Open Mic Night, also at the Kelly School.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you. Do you need to go do homework? Go ahead. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Julia.
The next item on our agenda, we are going to move up the overnight field trip to this agenda item because we have teachers, thank you, who are presenting that do not live in town. So if you would come and join us.
I'd like to, I'm Aileen McConey, our teacher, and I'd like to introduce you to Rose Hart, President of the National Art Honor Society, and Jacob Fisher, our Vice President. They nicely came along this evening in case you have any specific questions from them. Over the summer, they came to myself and Mary Rakowski, the other advisor of the National Art Honor Society, and said they wanted to go to New York. They wanted to get out of the sort of the fishbowl that Newburyport, it's one fishbowl as it is. They wanted to go and have an opportunity to really explore the greater cultures that are available in a big city like New York, and to go see some of the most important art collections in the world. So they did a lot of the footwork to get us to here. What we are proposing for you is an overnight trip to New York City. It's on the weekend of April 4th through 6th. It's on the same weekend of an already approved trip by the band and chorus, and we would be joining them. And because of our joining them, we will actually greatly reduce their costs because of the cost of the bus. We are actually will be probably the biggest group on the bus. So we will depart by charter bus from Newburyport High School on Friday morning. So the students will be responsible for one day of school that they will miss on this overnight. And we'll go through the normal procedures to let teachers know and for the students to be aware of what they need to do to make up. Okay. We'll return Sunday night also to the high school around 10-ish. We'll get back. During the course of the trip for the National Art Honor Society, we'll be staying at the Comfort Inn in Manhattan. We got great prices on the rooms. We will be going to MoMA. It happens to be free on Friday nights, and that's where we'll be heading to first. We'll be to MoMA. Each of the museums has great curriculum for high school students that we will partake in. So they'll do a project. It'll be curriculum based at each of the museums. And we'll tie it into also our curriculum here. So we'll go to MoMA on Friday night. We will also go to the Met. The Met is the only museum that we're choosing to go to that is $12 for students. And the Whitney is also free, and we'll be on the day we'll go for their age. So we'll be able to go to the Whitney for free. Again, each one of these will have a curriculum. So we'll be going to 3 major museums. And we're also going to go to Chelsea, to the Art District, to go gallery hopping, see some of the street art and things that will be going on in that area too. So they'll be embedded in the Art District. So almost all of our activities we'll be able to walk to. We'll be able to attend for free or for very low cost. We've also, will be going, I've actually, in the price that I put out in the handout that I had sent, I put down $400. That is estimated much higher than what I think we'll need. We're really at around $365, and that's counting for possibility of needing public transportation, and for a higher than what I think the price of their dinners would be. We'll go to the Hard Rock Cafe, and there the dinners are really about, they'll do, probably most of the kids will do a hamburger or something. The group rates are about $15. But I put it down as 30, right? So I'm overestimating a little bit at 400. I think they'll come in at around 365 for their price. For activities to raise money, we've already done that. We've done one. We plan to do more. We've done 2 different fundraisers so far. We did one where to help lower the overall cost of the trip, and we did a second one where kids could participate and lower their individual costs. Some kids have already got almost $150 off the price of the trip. Okay. Others, none, because they didn't do anything. So that's kind of the way it kind of goes. But we do plan some more. Currently, we have 27 students who are interested in attending. We do want to put out the permission slips starting Wednesday. We want to have an opportunity for parents, if they want to get information, to come next Wednesday to a meeting with myself and Mrs. Rakowski. And we'll need a deposit in by the 20th of December, because we have to put our down payment. We have rooms on hold at the Comfort Inn, but we do have to put a deposit down. Okay. So we'll look for a $40 deposit, which will be non-refundable. Then we are looking at probably doing like some kind of installment payment. I don't have the exact date that the last payment will be due, because we don't know yet when we have to get all our final costs in. Okay. Of the 27 kids, I don't think that they're probably all in the end signed up, but we are probably looking at in the end about 20 students that will go, which would mean we'll take 2 chaperones. But if we have 27, then we'll take 3 chaperones. It should be a great time. It's their idea, and I'm here just standing up here telling you about it because they've been saying, we gotta go to New York, we gotta go to New York, so.
Anybody have any questions?
Oh, sounds great.
Mr. Decanter?
I noticed that on the write-up that was sent through, it also includes the addition of the varsity chorus.
Yes.
So that-
The chorus is also, there's 8 students in chorus.
So that would be in addition to the band members that
Right,
Mr.
we can all, right.
talked about last time he was here.
Right.
He suggested that that might be happening, but I guess it's now confirmed. So is that correct, Mr. Payer? Okay, thank you.
And if I recall correctly, when the person came in and talked about the band, we asked for additional chaperones. So that was a contingency for accepting that. So you're within that range, correct? 1 chaperone per 8 to 10 students. So, and that will be arranged.
Yes.
Okay.
We looked at each of the institutes we're going to. They all require at least 1 chaperone for every 10 students.
Mhm.
And in talking with Mr. Parent, he he approved that we'd be 1 in 10. And that would meet the bus, that would meet the all the things that we're working with right now. But if we have 27 kids going, we will need an additional chaperone, which would make us 1 to 9.
Good. Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Having a wonderful trip.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys. It's
Good job.
your
You're going to New York. Next item on our agenda is a discussion of the budget, so I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent.
Gonna ask Mrs. Lysick to come up and join us, and I want to talk about the current budget situation now. Later on, underneath my superintendent's report, I want to talk about future planning for the budget, so I want to differentiate between the two. Handout coming around.
Is this different?
Yep.
This is different from the packet. Did you mean to, you don't want this going? Thanks. I didn't think you did.
She'd have a hard time not being able to answer questions if she didn't have that.
Well, especially if I got lost. Are you stuck?
Yeah, this is good.
Fluid, it's changed in a half an hour since the.
That's right.
Same total.
But it is fluid.
Nancy, would you please start walking us through this?
What I've done with this one now is I've added a column over to the right that's the change, so that each time that we meet, I'll put the amount of change in each category there for you, so you can have a running total and you can see the differences each time instead of trying to compare them. As we spoke earlier with joint ed, the total deficit now with the $161,000, if it gets approved by the city, would be $545,000. The only changes to this from the last time we met were that contracted services has the deficit has increased a little bit by $13,700. Transportation, $150. One item that I did remove is the building and ground supplies and materials. Steve's worked with his budget. I had a conversation with him last week, and he can survive without that money, so that deficit's been taken away. That are the only items that have changed at this time. I also included in the packet a little information about past use of choice funds in the budget, the additional revenue that we've used. And the choice fund balance started back in '09 at 177, and it's gone as high as 500,000 that we had in FY12. This will be the last year that we have a fund balance, probably, at 298. No additional money from like stimulus or ed jobs. So over the years, we've been able to use a significant amount of choice money to help fund the budget on a yearly basis.
Obviously, that is very concerning moving forward,
Yes.
to not have any carryover.
And Nancy, is that on the bottom of the second page, and it's close to $1 million? I'm on the second page of this handout down here. The deficit, choice deficit?
No,
It's-
that is, the choice, we budgeted 925, 928. Anticipated isn't calculated as yet, because we're still waiting for the figures from the state. Once I have those, that will plug in and offset it.
Okay.
I don't anticipate less than that, but I don't have that figure until after the first of the year. The same with circuit breaker.
Oops, right.
So when you talk about the potential additional funds, is that the choice for circuit breaker?
They would be choice and circuit breaker, yes.
Nancy, the carryover revenue for FY13 circuit breaker, that's not the sum total of the revenue we got last year, that's what.
No,
we
that was
carried.
what was not budgeted.
And again, do you remember the rate at which it was funded last year?
I wanna say it was over 65%.
Okay.
We budgeted in the budget at 55, so I do anticipate an increase there.
It might be useful for the members of the audience and people on television to have just a brief explanation of the circuit breaker and why we don't have a number for that.
Okay. Circuit breaker is determined by if you have a special education student that costs, say, $200,000. You take 4 times the foundation and deduct it from that amount. Anything over that, you would be reimbursed at whatever the state funds circuit breaker as. I don't believe it's ever been 100%. So they anticipated that this year it would be low. That's why we budgeted at 55%. There's talk now that they do expect it to be higher than that. but it could be anywhere from 55 to 75. We won't know until after the first of the year.
Thank you.
And just one other ancillary question. So we talked about a new placement, I think the last meeting, that was gonna be a $30,000 cost. So that would effectively not be eligible for circuit breaker, correct? Because 3 times or 4 times the foundation would be greater than that amount.
So
Yes.
if it's under that amount, then yes, it wouldn't be.
And we're still projecting $75,000 loss in lunches? Chartwell's, has that changed at all?
We are pretty much even right now. One of the sheets in your packet does show where we stand with Chartwell's right now with the school lunch. I should have tomorrow a report for October and November's reimbursements and number of meals sold, which will give us a better idea of how we've increased. I know it's over September, but I'm not sure yet exactly what it will. I can forward that all to you tomorrow if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great.
Year over year, though, we're about 45,000 behind where we were last year. So,
We're not ahead.
no, we're
No.
getting there. It's, I've heard the numbers of lunches are up, and that's a good thing. But that's also the amount of money that was taken out, so we don't have that to use.
No, we don't.
Right.
Any questions?
Yeah, just sort of a comment. At this point in time, in just about every year that I've been here, we've run a deficit. We anticipate a deficit, and so we freeze the budget, usually in October. This year it was earlier. And by the end of the school year, we get pretty close to being able to resolve that deficit. Can you talk about why that is going to be a little different this year? Why that's going to be harder for us?
It's my understanding that at this time last year, you still had, and Nancy, correct me if my figures are wrong, but somewhere in the neighborhood of $500,000 still. We don't have that right now, as a matter of fact. What would you say are?
Currently, we have $53,000.
So you don't have that to fall back on like you did at this time last year.
And that comes from, putting a sort of a freeze on getting supplies and a freeze on just about any other additional expenses that are not personnel expenses. They have to sort of go through you.
That's correct.
Yeah, and traditionally, the elementary school teachers have gone out and they've spent their money in the summer, so that has never been really part of that package, but I think everybody went out and got the supplies.
Correct.
This time.
And so moving forward, as I have said to this group before, one of the things that we'll do is we'll put some stopgap measures in place for next year so that we'll be having people probably spend, 25% of their money up to a certain date, and then we can move forward in increments like that so that we're sure that we won't put ourselves in this situation again.
Mayor?
I'd like to address the request to talk about the additional Chapter 70 funding that has been put forth to the City Council at their last City Council meeting as a supplemental budget, and they will be moving to take that out of Joint Ed Committee at their meeting on Monday night, and it's coming out with a favorable majority vote, which we saw them take tonight. Just to update everyone, the legislature at the time Governor Patrick signed the budget, there was an increase in Chapter 70 funding. What that translated to Newburyport was approximately $161,000. Now, because we fund significantly above what our obligation is to the school, when there is additional Chapter 70 funding, we can absorb that in the general fund. Last year, we transferred $90,000 in March based on what the projected deficit was of the increase of Chapter 70 that happened in the FY13 budget. This year in the FY14 budget, as I said, it was a little bit higher at 161, and given the deficit that we're faced with, it made sense to put this forward to the city council as a supplemental budget. A supplemental budget must be passed before the tax rate can be set, and the tax rate will be set on December 9th, which is why this was pushed out at this point as opposed to a transfer from free cash. It was decided to do a supplemental budget, which is based on revenue projections that the city does know that we have for FY14. And so that's why this was presented as a supplemental budget, as something that could certainly help ease a little bit the deficit that the schools are facing. And there was a request by city councilors that we take a vote to approve accepting that 160,070 amount. So I'd like to make that motion that we, as a school committee, accept the supplemental budget.
Second?
Discussion. Hearing none? Am I hearing none? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
One thing on this report that you see here where it has the $161,000, understanding that this has not been approved by the city yet. This is just here for informational purposes so that we could see what the final budget would look like if that passes.
So the bottom line is the green line on this paper,
If we receive the 160.
if we receive the okay.
As of today.
Mr. Menon?
Yeah, obviously there are a lot of moving parts, and there will continue to be moving parts, not only this year, but as we begin to project out next year. You know, there's moving parts on the revenue side, but there's also some moving parts on the expense side. One of the things we had talked about in the building project, and this doesn't help this year, but when we discuss how we're going to resolve this deficit, that is going to have an impact on next year's budget. Is there any way that we can sort of project out whether or not the new school, when it goes online, how is that going to counterbalance our energy expenses, our utility expenses? Is there any way to sort of project that out, whether we anticipate some savings there?
I mean, we're building a green school, if you will.
State of the art, yeah.
So I would certainly anticipate that our energy costs will be lower.
It's hard to.
It's hard to know exactly.
You're adding to, you're combining two schools.
Right.
So it's, I think what we'll be measuring our baseline on is next year's operations.
Right, there are many, many variables. I mean, yeah, they're green schools, but they're also gonna have better air circulation. They're gonna have, not 100% air conditioning, but they're gonna have a dehumidification system throughout the school that is not currently in use at the present Bresnahan or the Brown. It's gonna be a more comfortable school, it's gonna be a more healthy school, but I was asking those questions early on, and I haven't been getting my hopes up real high for a windfall of energy savings. I think we're gonna have a windfall of, possible maintenance savings and student comfort, staff comfort, quality environment.
My experience with 4 building projects is that in the 2 larger projects that we did experience savings over time, for sure. And you really need almost 2 years of data to begin to when you're looking at your monthly bills. so you can be able to track it in terms of your electricity consumption. You know, that's an area where we did see pretty significant savings. And
Well, you know, and to some extent, knowing that Steve Bergholm has virtually every year come to us with a reduction in his utility expenses, I kind of feel like a weasel saying, well, you know, are we going to get more reduction? But it certainly has to be part of the calculation. Again, two of the variables here are circuit breaker reimbursement and choice reimbursement. But that's not going to substantially reduce the deficit, even at its most optimistic.
correct, I think that's accurate.
So, obviously, this is going to impact our conversation for next year, but it's also going to have, it could also potentially have an impact this year.
Yes.
Okay. And again, we expect to hear about circuit breaker in February and choice before the end of the year?
Mid-January.
Mid-January, okay. So we'll be getting that information just as we are getting full swing into budget.
Mhm.
Mr. Decanter?
What process have we used, or what are we doing in order to identify how we're going to mitigate whatever shortfall we end up with? I mean, we're hope against hope that we will be able to reduce this amount. I would be thrilled, of course, if we erase it, but I'm not holding my breath for that one. And I don't think anybody's asking me to hold my breath for that one.
Yeah.
So if that is the case, what is the process that we're going through in order to identify the opportunities to balance the budget?
I mean, we're really looking at everything that we can. But, I mean, I think that at some point we're going to have to, one of the things that the school committee will have to consider is talking with the city council in terms of and that came up in our earlier discussion tonight, that at some point that may be what we have to do. And again, you know, this is what I would term the perfect storm. You've been, from what I have learned, you have been heading towards this for a number of years, and now our back is against the wall. There is no more contingency. All the contingency has been taken out of the budget. You know, I talked with you earlier about having to be planful in the future and to provide some contingency in certain areas. And, I mean, certainly moving forward, that's one of the things that I will be talking with you about in terms of the 14-15 budget. But at this point, I mean, the budget has been, in my opinion, you're hearing here, underfunded for many years in a row, and we've cut, and now there's nothing left to be cut without hitting programs, without raising class size. I mean, that's the position that we're in right now.
It's not a new position. I wish it were, but it's a position that we've been in for, I know at least since I've been on the school committee, it seems we've been chasing the same $1.5 million year after year after year after year.
Yeah, and I mean, based on what I've been able to find, I mean, you know, one of the things that I handed out earlier, and I apologize, I don't have additional copies because they all went, one of the surprising statistics for me was that Newburyport's percentage of education spending from the general fund, we're ranked 292 out of 351 communities. That's at 42.4%.
Out of the general fund, that
Yeah,
meaning
yeah.
state money? Or
No,
meaning
cities.
City,
money?
yeah. And that was a surprise. That was a surprise.
Again, I would like to have that information about whether or not it includes the fact that we carry the school health benefits
Yeah.
separate. That's a
I think
huge
that's a
chunk
huge
of
chunk.
change. And if that's
Would
not
modify
part
that
of that,
position.
that would clearly change our ranking there.
I would agree with
And we
that.
need to know that before that number keeps being put out there.
Yeah.
It's, well, this was based on, this came out of government center snapshots. It is my understanding, and again, I have not been able to get a hold, I did email Matt Carroll, but I did not hear back from him. It is my understanding that most of the cities and towns that I'm aware of do carry health insurance on their public employees, if you will. So that would include teachers. So but I hopefully can verify that and get some specific
Yeah, it's something for us to
information.
look at and see,
Yeah.
so we know that we're comparing apples to apples here. Absolutely, I agree with the mayor on that, that needs to be clear.
Yep.
And I'm not as concerned in terms of comparing ourselves versus other communities, although that's certainly a benchmark. I think what I'm looking for here is saying, okay, a perfect storm has hit. It's hit us in the way of unfunded additional special education tuition. It's hit us in the way of additional transportation that is needed. It has hit us in the way of additional food services costs. It has hurt us in terms of inflation probably being greater than what we had expected it to be in a lot of areas. So it's not, certainly I recognize that it's certainly not a single thing that has caused this, and I guess it's not going to be a single thing that is going to pull us out of the hole that we're in. And so that is why I'm saying, okay, yes, we need to look at everything, I agree. What is the process for doing that? What kinds of, as we look at everything, what kinds of priorities, what kind of framework are we establishing for making the decisions as to what we can cut or cut back on or eliminate in order to close the gap, and what we can't touch? And I think that kind of discussion is something that also needs to be held here at this level.
Nancy?
After the first of the year, when we have a better idea on choice and circuit breaker, we'll also run a new salary projection to see where we are with substitutes in our regular salary line items, as well as the revolvings. Kindergarten revolving, we'll update those figures based on current revenue that we've received. We'll do the same thing with school building maintenance and what we've spent for custodial overtime. All of that will be reevaluated again. And then hopefully we'll have, another figure that will tell us, with the revenue that we receive from the state for choice and circuit breaker, just how much of a deficit we're looking at. We will be looking at a deficit, but.
Yeah, well, my concern is I don't want to be looking at figuring out how we're going to balance the budget 2 weeks before our fiscal year is over. We need to start thinking about it now and having the discussions about it now.
We will not be doing that 2 weeks before the budget.
And at the last,
I understand that, Mayor. Being a little facetious.
I think the superintendent, she can speak for herself, is already working on a plan. The last time we had a FinCom meeting, we suggested that Susan begin taking a look, turning over every rock there possibly could be, and then we're going to have to make some decisions.
There will be no plan that will not be painful, however.
Right.
I understand that. And that is why I would like to be, and as much as I'm interested in the numbers that these plans produce, I'm interested in the thought process and the priorities that we're setting in order to reach that plan.
Yes. Yes. And as again, the superintendent is working on that, with Nancy, but also with the administrators to, kind of determine where we are. And then the superintendent shared with me that she would be asking what our priorities are too. So it's Mr. Cole, sorry.
Yeah, no, one thing to add on to what Mr. DeCanter is saying, and I said it last year, is that if there is an opportunity for school committee to be at the table when administrators are deciding programmatic cuts, I think that's going to be really important to preserve any priorities that we establish, and probably we're going to have to do that, sooner as opposed to later. But I think it's really important we're at the table. Again, when those programmatic things are being discussed, we can't be there for personnel. We can certainly be there for programmatic things.
Is there anything you wanted to add?
No, but, one thing I will add, but to Mr. Cole's point, is that moving forward, one of the things that we had already talked about, and I'll talk about a little bit more tonight, is that as we move forward into the 14-15 budget, the development of that, and as we're going through the process, it's a process that I want to make very systematic so that the school committee is well aware of when something has been cut that was initially put into the budget, and we'll have that process so that we'll follow that. Just as Nancy has done here, we'll do that same thing with the budget, so that you will be able to see, even from whether it's week to week, exactly the decisions that have been made, what the impact of those decisions are. So, because I think that is an important factor that will help to keep this kind of a budget situation from happening again.
Ms. Bick, can I ask you, have we suffered at all? Can you give us a status on our grants? Has the total changed? Has it increased?
They've decreased. Most of our grants were a decrease this year, just from the funding sources from the state. So we took about a 20% decrease in our Title I funds this year. We stayed about the same, I believe, in our Title IIA, maybe just a $5,000 decrease there. None of them increased. I can tell you that. Some of them were a minimal decrease, and some of them were as much as 20% of a decrease in those grants. And we've been very conservative about how we're using the grants given the current budget situation. So I'm grateful every day that we have them, because that is how we're purchasing anything right now, is with the grant money, and really trying to prioritize any kind of purchases that need to be made. You know, we're lucky enough to have funding also from the Swayze organization as far as professional development for teachers, but we don't even have the money to pay for substitutes to send teachers to professional development. So I'm trying to find ways to use grant money to pay for substitutes so that they can even go. So, you know, it's all a balancing act, and every day we're looking at it in a different way. I keep coming to the superintendent with different scenarios. Well, maybe we've got this amount of money, perhaps, so we could stretch it to make this happen this way, or maybe we use it in this way. So we're just trying to make really thoughtful decisions about the money. I've had to amend already a couple of the grants because what they were intended to appeared to be a luxury we couldn't afford. Right.
So did we lose money in that scenario, or you just used it a different way?
No, just used it a different way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. When's D-Day?
It's hard to answer.
I guess I want a ballpark only so that
I mean,
we can use this time judiciously.
January.
February 1st.
Yeah.
February 1st, January.
I could agree with that.
Okay.
Yeah. February 1st, I think that's
Okay.
it.
So we have a
That's
lot of work
realistic.
to do between now and then.
Yes.
Any further questions at this point? Hearing none, I'm going to move on now. Thank you for that update. Thank you, Nancy, for joining us. Next on our agenda are building projects updates. I don't know who to turn that over to. Steve! Mr. Bergholm.
Ma'am.
Come join us. I was wondering why you were hanging out.
Just thought I'd see the festivities. Tony Proner sends his regrets for not being here this evening. He was planning on being here, but went away for the holiday weekend to visit family and got ill. So he's a little tardy in returning from Pennsylvania. Just start by making kind of a general statement about both building projects. Both were estimated to have a construction duration of about 17 to 18 months. Both began last March and are scheduled for all intents and purposes to be done next August. So we're about 9 months in, with about 9 months left to go on both projects. And we are currently at about the 50% mark of the projects based on what the architects have certified as work completed, as well as where we are in spending the budget for the projects. So by that kind of simple litmus test, we're pretty much right on schedule where we need to be for the projects. At Knockmolen, the weekend before Thanksgiving, we took occupancy of the Phase 2 classrooms, and construction began on Phase 3 classrooms. That occupancy happened about 5 to 6 weeks earlier than originally scheduled. We weren't scheduled to go into Phase 3 until the last week in December. So we're taking advantage of that gain in time by splitting Phase 3 up into two kind of sub-phases, a Phase 3A and a Phase 3B, so that we're not taking so many classrooms out of service all at once and making it a little bit easier to find space in which to move all the classrooms around. The original phasing plan for Phase 3 was fairly aggressive in the number of classrooms that it was taking, and the principals found it difficult to shuffle things around within the building to find space for everybody. So Phase 3A takes 4 classrooms on the first floor and 4 classrooms on the second floor. And those are worked on, obviously starting now and running through February vacation, at which point we will then switch over into Phase 3B, which takes the additional 3 classrooms on each of those 2 floors. Right now, the Phase 3A is in the demolition stage. The things are basically being pulled apart and their ceilings taken down, cabinets being pulled out, boards being taken off the walls, things being prepared for abatement of the floor tile. That work will all really kick into gear this week, and once that abatement gets done, then they go into starting to put it back together. So we're really off and running with Phase 3A, and if all goes well, we should be ready to move into Phase 3B in the middle of February. Then Phase 3B takes us from the middle of February to the middle of April, which then puts us into Phase 4, which runs through the summer. So that's basically where we are at right now at Knockmolen. Any questions about that?
Steve,
Mayor?
did they start the infrared assessment of the roof yet?
No, I believe that's going to happen either later this week or next week.
Okay.
Has not been done yet. The mayor's referring to a test that we're going to do on the roof areas that are being replaced next summer to give us an idea of what kind of problems or damage that we might find once we start opening up the roof, so that we don't have too many surprises and therefore extra additional costs with repairs to the roof.
Is that the entire roof, or is that like where the solar panels are?
We're replacing about 75,000 square feet of the roof. It will not be on the area over the 2-story classroom wing, because we just replaced that in about 6 years ago. It is not over the gym or the auditorium, because those roofs are in pretty decent condition, but it's the rest of the, kind of the lower roof areas. It is in areas where there are solar panels, but that's all been taken into consideration in the budget of the project.
Okay.
And is this work being done during the school day, or still pretty much starting at 2:30 and going till 10 o'clock, or?
There is some work going on during the school day. It's quieter work. Most of the majority of the work is starting at 2:30 and running till night, especially the noisier, dustier.
And will that be the same for the roof repair?
The roof will not start until probably
Summer?
late spring.
Oh, okay.
There might be some pre-work before school gets out, but most of it will be next summer.
Thank you. Anybody have any further questions or comments? Dan or the mayor?
The roof work is the biggest unknown left on that job.
Yeah, now that we've gone through 2 phases of the job, we've kind of run into all the different kinds of unknowns that we expect to find. There's been some masonry issues where some of the masonry in the classrooms has had to have been rebuilt and resulted in some additional costs. So there's been some minor things here and there. We don't expect any more major surprises, just because the building was all constructed at the same time, and we think we've pretty much seen what we're going to see along the way. This, just because of the nature of this project, this kind of project, there's always something that could pop up that could surprise you, but we're hoping we're in pretty good shape from here on out.
Well, but I think that there has been a couple things that have been surprises, and I think this is part of doing a construction management at risk, and then you end up with these change orders that are, for example, we're real concerned about what they have given us for a price for industrial dishwasher. And, we just were very surprised by that, $125,000. That's, plumbing, installation, and the actual machine. But we think that that is astronomically high, but we look at what will it cost in terms of throwing away all the trays, the silverware, the dishes, the cups on an, ongoing basis versus, and we're a green community, we're a green school, and, unfortunately, the decision to go back to using dishes and silverware and plates and trays happened after the buildings were, the design was complete and already at the vote and at the school building committee. So that's why we have these change orders. However, our contractor said that they would not be opposed to the owner taking responsibility for some of these projects and doing them independently, which is, that would help in terms of cost for some of these. So some of those kinds of projects, we have to make decisions as a school building committee about what we're gonna do. And if we can get additional quotes and come in at lower cost, because, it's important that even though we had these bids come in under with the change orders, it's slowly eating away at what we've had set aside as contingency as well as potential buffer for us to work on. And I think some of the classrooms, I'm disappointed because we had thought that the bringing in and mix and matching the old cabinets with the new cabinets, they'd look all right. And they don't.
They don't.
They don't. The wood with the bright purple, and the wood with the turquoise, and the wood with the orange, I think we need to get some paint and just go in there and paint those cabinets, and we can have a community service day in August where we all go in and paint classrooms, cabinets, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Steve's looking forward to that, I can tell.
Well, you just instruct us
He's
to
like-
make sure you have the right color paints for us.
You might be going down to see Tony Perner in
Right.
Pennsylvania that week.
Bruce?
Yeah, I just had a question. I just want to make sure that I understand. When you talked about the owner taking responsibility, that would be funded outside of, is that funded with monies from the school building project or outside of the school
No, it'll
building?
be money from the school building project, but, you know, again, it's, you know, think about what percentage of our money as citizens of Newburyport have been allocated for this project. So we certainly can set aside a piece of funding to do that.
So when you're saying take responsibility, it's like, we go out and subcontract, we take the bids, okay.
Use the city
But
plumber.
we can use monies.
Yeah, we're in a situation now where we've got the contractors in the building, and, you know, anytime you start asking for change orders, they're gonna jack the prices up. And, but it's still our building that we can do what we want with, so, you know, we can find better, more efficient ways to approach some of these things.
Some things, yeah, we can.
Some of the things.
Some of the things.
Some of the things, you're better off paying the premium,
Right.
because if we bring in our own plumber.
And it's connected
and
to
it's
this,
connected
to
to their
this system.
plumbing, and we have
yeah.
a problem, then it's gonna be, everybody's gonna play the blame game.
And I think one of the other things that is going to be a bit of a challenge with both projects is the technology budget, and getting the right technology into the buildings when the project is all completed. The technology subcommittee has come up with a substantial list of technology that needs to go into the buildings. And in both cases, the budget is about half of what that list of technology is. So the building committee is going to have some difficult decisions to make along the way, to decide what is the right technology, what is the right level of technology to get into the buildings. And both the technology subcommittee and the building committee are going to be working on that over the next few months before we go out to bid in the spring. Bruce?
Yeah, I know that, if I recall, with regard to the technology, the infrastructure piece, the networking piece, the wires in the wall piece, you guys brought a consultant in to work with you to help you figure that out. In terms of the actual sort of hardware kinds of pieces of technology, how is that being informed and how is that being supported to make sure that we've got, you know, people who really understand how technology is evolving, helping to feed information into the decision making?
That same consultant is working on us right down to that level of detail. Along with the subcommittee, the technology subcommittee, which includes the principals, some of the teaching staff, technology staff in the buildings. So it's a very large committee.
Our IT, school IT.
The
folks.
IT department. So it's a large committee with a lot of people on it.
My caution and my concern would be that I like the idea of having a sort of fresh ideas. People are going to support the stuff that they know about, and they're not going to support stuff that they don't know about. So I would like as broad a capture as possible for that, so that we can get the best bang for our buck. So I would be hesitant to sort of, just leave it to sort of teachers and principals and maybe some other members of the committee to decide on the technology. I would really encourage you to really make use, if this guy can consult to you on that, what technology should be in a student's hand, then really make use of that.
He actually has, Bruce, and they've come and done displays, brought the Enzo boards, showed how they worked, demonstrated, so they brought a whole range. The teachers have also gone out to other schools that have much greater use of technology, more one-to-ones, and have gone to schools that are considered, the blue ribbon schools, or schools that are using technology in different ways than we are, and have gone to tour those schools, talk to teachers, talk to principals, talk to technology folks, and they've also brought in an IT staff from another school district who, is connected to Newburyport, who came in and is also working and offering some suggestions on that. So I certainly believe that the teachers have done a tremendous amount of due diligence regarding going out to look at other programs and what other schools are doing at this point. I don't think there's any question about that.
Yeah, and I'm not negating that work. I just, we got one shot at this.
I know.
And I think we take our best shot at it, and not be afraid of sort of outside feedback.
Oh, the only thing I was going to add to that is, one of the things that we did do this year was to make sure we had good representation at the MassQ conference too, where teachers could be exposed to all of the newest technologies associated with education and really talk about looking towards the future.
Great. Any further questions for anyone on the building committee?
That was just knock.
Oh,
We haven't done
sorry.
We haven't done Brad yet.
We have another project, yes.
Any more questions about the NOC
Well, just
building
that we have
project?
to make a decision about the superintendent's suite very soon.
Oh, the movement, or
Yeah, well, and youth services and all of that, so that's, I think,
another deadline?
yeah.
What is that deadline?
And what, yeah.
Well, they're gonna be moving the suite in May,
Superintendent's offices.
June.
Anyway,
Once
so.
school gets out,
So
yeah.
we obviously need to make decisions before then, and they've tentatively told us that if we wanted to turn that whole suite into classrooms as a major change order, that we're talking $900,000. So, we're looking at all the options. Could we make it music rooms instead, and could we not have to make those significant changes to the layout of the superintendent area? So, anyway, we're looking at all the options at this point. We haven't made final decisions, but we have to soon.
And we're still looking at Brown?
Yes.
And when you say soon?
We have to make a decision within the next month, I would say.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
Will we have the information about the Brown as part of that decision-making process? Will we understand what it's going to take to renovate the Brown and get it up to speed?
That would be part two. I think what the first decision to be made is whether or not it's feasible for us to put youth services in there, the superintendent's suite, how much additional space will be left at the Brown School for us to do something interesting or creative like art studios or music rooms or something, so that we can generate a little bit of revenue from there. Speaking of Brown, I would like just to clarify another point that was made earlier, is that it's not that the teachers don't appreciate the request to move the amphitheater, which was the opened area. The problem is for the age of the children, they were hurting themselves on the granite benches. So it seems that the actual amphitheater, with the shape of the scallop with the stones, or the bricks that were carved should go, but the actual granite benches shouldn't stay or be looked at differently in terms of what we want to put around it for the students, because they said they fall and hurt themselves on it more often than not. So I thought that was good feedback from the teachers when we were talking at the last school building committee about the actual amphitheater. And there's absolutely no reason why we can't, as a community, pull together volunteers and using our DPS, move this thing without having to spend the $45,000 change order that they're saying it's going to cost the contractor to do that. So that's something else that I think that we can easily organize as a community to do.
Is there any liability?
Oh, you're moving stones, you're volunteering.
So can I just, follow-up question? So is this a history of children being hurt on these granite seats? I've walked by and viewed them myself.
Yeah.
There's a history.
According to the principal there, that was what she presented. I mean, if you want me to
Yeah.
get
Oh, no.
more detail, I can.
Well, I guess I'm a little troubled that we're not hearing, quote, I mean, I could see isolated event, but if it's a history, I'm a little troubled that we haven't heard more about it.
I think part of it was because it was, originally when it was designed, it was a K through 4
Okay.
area that was used. And I think that the other problem is that I guess kids in the neighborhood are moving so that they're sliding them out, some of the granite blocks, so that they're not actually that's safe and secure. So those are all the kinds of
Right.
things we have to look at.
Sure, yeah, okay.
And apparently, one of the other things that she showed me, the corners are very sharp in some of them, and kids have fallen.
Sure. Yeah.
No, they're not beveled.
You know.
So maybe we
Right.
could, maybe we could bevel them.
Right.
So,
I don't know. Those are all the things
Yeah.
we need to look
Contact,
at.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
Bruce?
Again, I just want to go back to something to make sure that I'm clear about it. I'm sorry for being so thick about this. The decision about this, whether or not we're going to modify the superintendent suite, you're saying that we need to make a decision in probably within about a month because of the change orders. Who's making that decision? Is that the building committee making that decision? Is that something that comes to us? I'm just a little confused. And that was why I was asking,
of course.
if we have to make that decision, will we have at least some ballpark information about what the Brown is going to cost to make those renovations?
That's correct. And I think first and foremost, we have to decide because, the information that we received from Knockmollen principals is that they are out of absolute space. And so, isn't that make the most sense is for that school to be a school and that we put offices somewhere else if, we need the space for school. So those are the conversations that need to happen fairly intensely over the next several weeks, particularly as we get into early January, and that Steve, our planning office, Superintendent Vaccaro, any member of the school committee who would like to join us, or myself and our planning office and youth services will all go over there. We'll lay out the plans. We'll begin to see if it makes sense for us to be able to do this. And that's the first step. And I think we have to at least make that preliminary decision, and then we decide, what is it going to cost? The school's not in bad shape. There are things that need to happen, and one would be an elevator, I know would have to be upgraded and improved. But, overall, I think the school's not in that bad shape, for what we're thinking about. So more conversation, and we'll keep you posted. And when we're going to, have this meeting, we'll put it out to the members of the school committee if you'd like to join us.
Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Just one small point of clarification, though, is for us, for the school committee not to make a decision on how that building is changed, it would have to be closed first. Meaning we'd have to vote to close it. And then, because otherwise I think while the school is still open, it's the school committee that makes a decision as to how that building is going to be changed.
Well, why can't we make that when it's open? I get concerned about the implications of closing it,
No, but
even for
But
an
that's what,
hour.
I mean, there's a certain, no, when we retire the building, is what I'm saying. There comes a point when we have to vote to retire the building.
Right, but we're not necessarily doing that.
I know that.
Retiring it as a school.
I'm just saying
But we're
there's,
still using it for school purposes,
okay, right,
administrative offices.
right. But for us, the point I'm trying to make here is if we as a school committee can vote to approve any change to the structure, only when that building is in operation. So, someone asked earlier, who's gonna make the decision? Is it gonna be, yeah, okay.
All of us.
So it's clear that'll be a school committee
It
decision?
has to be.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that was clear, because we struggled with that when we were doing the solar panels a number of years ago, for a while.
Okay. The one thing that we have to do is go back and walk through all of the votes that happened with Kelly, to be sure. We're working on a preservation easement for the facade now for that. But it's clear, that we don't have a choice with that building in terms of the amount of work that needs to happen there. So we just have to be sure that all those appropriate steps have happened, and it goes into surplus, and
Okay,
RFP is issued by the planning office in the city, and then that generates revenue that can be used to address the issues at Brown,
okay,
and hopefully a little balance
right.
schools.
And what is the involvement with the Kelly at this point? Is that,
It's no longer a school building, it's a city building.
I understand that, but is there any, are we thinking of selling that building, getting money?
Yes.
I didn't know if it was tied into the renovation at the Brown, or they were two separate issues, that's all.
Well, I think we're gonna need some kind of funding to do work at the Brown.
Mhm.
There's,
Well,
you know,
I- yeah,
So,
okay.
so depending on what we get for the Cali School, I think that, you know, again, that money can be channeled into, the Brown.
And will you have to move youth services before we begin to explore that?
Don't know yet.
Okay.
Again, we have to figure out, you know, is the space that they could move into?
Mhm.
Could they move in, you know, a couple weeks after school closes?
Okay.
After they clear all the furniture out, or whatever they're gonna do at Brown, you know, I mean, so we have to, those are all the questions that we need to, you know, work on, and I think we need sort of a subcommittee to work on Kelly Brown issues at this point, so.
Anything further?
Bresnahan?
Rez?
Okay, Bresnahan, the contractor is currently working to get the building closed up as tight as possible and getting some temporary heat in there so that, you know, it's a little more workable. It's pretty chilly in that building right now. Some of us have walked through recently, and it,
14 degrees colder than.
it's cold in there, but the work is still continuing.
They haven't put heat in yet.
They have not. That should be happening this week. Most of the windows are in. Other openings are being closed up with plywood and plastic. And like I said, they're hoping to get the temporary heat on in there later on this week. Inside, most of the interior walls have been framed. So it's really starting to come together nicely. You can start to see what the spaces are going to look like. It's pretty exciting when you walk through. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing contractors are continuing all of their rough-in work, and finished block walls are being installed in the gymnasium as we speak. Sheetrock is being installed up on the third floor in the third floor classrooms. I walked through this morning. I'd say probably better than half of the classrooms up on the third floor now have the sheetrock up on the walls. A base coat of paving has been done in the parking lot and down Murphy Avenue. Granite curbs are almost complete going down Murphy Avenue towards Low Street. And once those are done, they will start installing a new sidewalk up Murphy Avenue. Then the final paving of all of that happens next summer. Also, the steel for the entry canopies are on site, is on site, so those canopies will start to be installed later on this month. And so that's basically where we stand with the construction right now.
The, one other piece that the building commissioner and inspectors have determined that we don't need to do that outside line attaching the grease trap so it doesn't go back under the school and connect. They, you know, that's another, what was that, $65,000?
That's about a $60,000.
Yeah, so that was another change order, so I was very happy to hear that they, after reviewing state regs, and decided that we didn't need to do that. So, seemed very unnecessary to a lot of us, so that's good.
Excellent. Any questions? Any further questions?
We got rid of the kiln.
Yeah, we lost the kiln.
Yeah, no, because that, again, was a change order, and once they figured out what it was gonna cost to make the room, and then bring the kiln in, it was ridiculous.
$150,000. It was just as much for the room as it was for the kiln.
Didn't make any sense. Wow. So, they've got one up here, they can figure it out. Have to do road trips.
I can see it, breakage in the car on the way. No.
Look at those little rubber things.
Yeah, I know.
It's fine.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I just have one.
Steve?
Is there any plan to centralize all the living amphibian, terrestrial, and aquatic exhibits?
Oh, yes.
And
Yes.
this is quite a bit.
They were
quite a bit.
working on 15 sites for the aquariums at the school.
Okay.
Yeah, so no, they're definitely looking at that. Is it 15?
There's,
17.
yeah, there's 15
17.
out in the hallways, and then there's 2 in the principal's office.
Right.
and
Not to
out-
worry,
outer
all
office.
living
Well, you also have the-
creatures will be taken care of.
Well, but the terrestrials, the terrestrial, those need attention. They need specific lighting,
Right.
cyclical, and you need to budget for them too, so. I've talked with Mr. Hom at Village Pet, who typically oversees some of it, and you have about 208 square feet of living area, various living area, whether it be aquatic, semi-aquatic, or terrestrial to take care of, and it requires, some planning, and I think it'd be nice if, since the NEF is the one that pretty much bought a lot of those habitats, that there'd be some maybe centralized area, and that they could, it could be dedicated to them for their efforts, but.
I thought they were moving them, sort of spreading them out in different sections of the school building.
Yeah, we have to be cautious about where we put them, just so we're not blocking hallways. And,
Sure.
And, that
Yeah.
they're
As
Yeah.
opposed
kind
to
of
a central
visible,
room.
but they're,
Yeah.
not in the way.
As long as,
Maybe we should be sure that we reach out to, the
Pet City.
Pet City, so that he could come and make sure that.
Village Pet.
Village
I'm
Pet.
sorry, I said it.
Sorry.
Sorry.
That's right.
That, maybe because he, I don't.
Well, I think with respect to Mr. Hom, it's a labor of love for him, but I don't think it's something that we should be expecting him to be
No,
continuing.
no, but
to-
just consult.
Right, oh yeah,
Are we
absolutely.
doing the right
Oh, yeah.
thing? Are we putting it
Yeah.
in the right area?
Well, I think that the teaching staff does a pretty good job of it, but again, this is an opportunity with a new building as Steve mentioned, make sure it's in the right place, so.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the other things related to that we're working on is that each of the students and a lot of the staff are going to create a 4x4 ceramic tile that will be built into the building and installed in the corridors. So we want to
We'd
make
like
sure.
all school committee members to make sure you do your tile, too.
You can, yes, absolutely. So we don't want to place any of these displays in front of somebody's tile as well and block that. So there's a couple different things we're working with there.
Well, if I can put a fish on my tile, then you can put the aquarium, right? That would work.
Would have to move, though.
Oh, look. Well, there's a holographic thing.
And I think the only other thing is that we continue to meet on a monthly basis with the abutters. And, are addressing some of their issues and concerns that come up in the best way we possibly can. And, a lot of their concerns are landscaping, fencing, and traffic. And so we've got to move forward and really take a hard look at what the traffic is gonna be like down there at the Bresnahan too, in coordination with the Senior Community Center.
Thank you, Mr. Burkholm.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Next item on our agenda is our subcommittee reports. We've held off until this time to do subcommittee reports. The mayor had requested that each chair present the committee with a summary of the work that has gone on in each of those committees for the past year. We have received those. So I'm going to ask the chairs to kind of give us a succinct synopsis of the work that's gone on. So I'm going to start negotiations. Mr. Menon and I serve on that committee. The lingering thing we have there, we are meeting in subcommittee to discuss stipends. We have set ourselves a deadline of January to come up with a plan, a proposal, whatever. The difficulty is we've only met once. So we'll continue to try and work on that. As far as the superintendent's goals committee is concerned, the mayor is the chair. We have had 2 meetings with Superintendent Vaccaro. We are still working off the focus areas, the 6 focus areas that she developed for us at the last meeting at the suggestion of the mayor. We added a 7th focus area, which is finance and budget. That will be another thing that the superintendent will report back on us. She has asked, or suggested to us that her entry plan will be ready for presentation in January. So those are those two committees. The building committee we've already heard from. I'm gonna quickly just say the NEF auction, we don't have a final figure yet, but that one night, after expenses, we're looking at between $50,000 and $60,000 for the schools. And if you recall, that's for the lights, sound, and curtains for the auditorium at the Knock. So that's just wonderful, and I applaud those people. So we have 4 standing committees according to our rules and regulations at this point. So that's what I'm going to ask you to report back on. And then the next time we have a school committee meeting, we will have a discussion about subcommittees if we want to add the 2 and talk about the 2 that we talked about last year. So I'm going to start with Joint Ed.
Joint Ed. So Joint Ed met the first school committee meeting of every month with the exception of July, August, and November. Basically, the 2 committees, it is a subcommittee of the City Council. We have discussed, especially last winter and spring, upcoming budget issues. Oftentimes the meetings have revolved around educating the City Council on some of the specifics of our budget. Our most recent meeting was tonight, and we discussed the budget deficit, and we discussed special ed in particular and Chartwells. A lot of questions were asked by the school committee with regards to how we've gotten here, and kind of have laid the foundation of things that we're going to do differently going forward. So I anticipate basically Joint Ed generally revolves around budget, but that's not to say that it couldn't involve something else. Normally the agenda is made by the chair of the City Council of Joint Ed, and basically I think she develops that by feedback from other city councilors, and or we are welcome to include things as well.
I would just add to that after tonight, that one of the things that I might suggest is that we do a presentation on special education funding for them and on some of the topics that came up tonight. I think that would be important to help educate them about the process.
Yeah, and I anticipate that if we were ever to move past the budget, which we might not with Joint Ed, I do know there's been some expressed interest last year about, MCAS scores, where Newburyport falls. There were some brief discussions. So it's a little tricky. I will say it is a tricky committee in that it has happened in the past that their agenda is stuff that has not been discussed here as a whole. That's been a struggle, and it continues to be a struggle, and I don't really know how we all feel about it. I wrestled with it. So that I'm just going to kind of throw out there as it's one of the dysfunctions that can occur with that subcommittee.
Do you mean that they would be talking about certain subjects or asking questions that had not been discussed with this group?
Right. Okay. And early on, towards the middle or end of last year, and I actually don't remember what the issue was, but it's something the City Council caught wind of as a school issue, and I wish I could remember what it was, and maybe somebody else does. So they wanted to discuss it at Joint Ed. So we discussed it with the superintendent at Joint Ed, but had not been discussed here as a whole. And it caused some strife. So it's tricky. It's very, very tricky. They will often ask the questions about the budget prior to us being able to be here to hear your budget update and things, and I don't really know what to do with that, so.
Have it on the agenda, or you're not gonna talk about it. If it comes, then,
Like today, we got the agenda via email. Did you get that?
No.
Okay. Today, so I actually don't recall, it was somewhat this morning, and I forwarded it to you because I didn't have your email. So, I mean, that doesn't give you a lot of time to prepare. I mean, I think we kind of knew what it was gonna be about, but that's when we received the agenda, was today.
I have to say, though, it was very encouraging to see so many city councilors here, for this discussion.
It was, and and I can at least name one or two other occasions where we've almost gotten everybody from the city council here at the table, over issues like that. And other times, sometimes it's like an open mic night, and, but I anticipate the budget and possibly testing scores would be something that they would interest themselves with, and probably our food service at this point. So.
Thank you. Anybody have a question for Audrey? Hopefully not.
Hopefully not.
Thank you. Policy, Mr. Menon?
Policy has met infrequently, probably quarterly, I would say, over the last year. Our main task was redrafting the school mission and looking at our email response, how we do that. The proposal for responding to emails was not favorably looked upon by the whole school committee, so that is back taking a look at, we're taking a look at that, or I'm taking a look at that piece anyway. There has not been a lot of tasks for policy. Those policies that we've had to adopt have almost always come through the superintendent, that we'll hear, well, this is, you have to have this as a policy for the school committee, and we'll adopt that on an ongoing basis. There are things we've done historically, but it's not, it doesn't seem to me to be a standing committee that needs to meet every month, that has a task every month. And I would invite anybody else who serves on the committee to share their perspective on it.
I think there's an element of education that we have fallen short on as a policy committee, and that is to be the people who, on a regular basis, educate the public at large as to the governance model that we work with, because that is not something that is easily or commonly understood. Parents or other constituents will approach us about things that really site-based issues that need to be addressed at the site, not at the school committee, or they'll come to us with stuff that really is within the realms of what we have charged the superintendent to do for us on our behalf. And so understanding how our semi-carver model works is something that I would like to see brought up and build upon, so that we have a better understanding of that within the public.
I think we need to really take a look at a retreat in January, whether or not we even want to stay with this model.
Right.
Since we're operating on a model that I don't think any of us even understand. Or, well, one out of, or maybe Bruce too, but.
Yeah, but weren't you the roommate with the guy who presented it to us? Yes, you were. That's part of the agenda that we'll talk about the next time when we really open up discussion about subcommittees. These are just reports. Do you have any goals set for this year, Mr. Menon? Other than?
I do not, other than
Okay.
defining I think a more clear role and agenda.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to the retreat for that.
Thank you. Communications, Mr. Decanter?
Well, certainly. The Communications Committee is a standing committee that meets before the second school committee meeting of each month at 5:30, right here in room 118. Our accomplishments over the past years is we have attempted to improve the public conversation portion of our meeting by working on topics. We've developed a very good list of topics that range everything from things like drugs and consequences at NHS, to strengthening the science instruction in STEM, to budget priorities, wellness, improving communications, technology, yada, yada, yada. The list is a long list. Much of that list is developed through input from people in the community at large who say, hey, you know, we really need to be talking about this, and I'd really like to hear more about that, whatever it be. So we do have developed that list. As we went into the latest phase of working that list, we really talked about how most of those subjects really required more than just 30 minutes for discussion, for a true understanding. And so we've begun looking at new ways of handling those. We discussed that at the last meeting. I won't go into that again right now. We have also developed a template for both the district and school website, so that there's a consistency from school to school to school, and how that feeds into a district website so that people have an easy time finding what they need to find. And right now, we're at the point where Superintendent Vaccaro is looking for some outside funding to help us get some professional help in the design and hosting aspects of that. So we're looking forward to that, because that's one of our two continuing goals for the future, and I think it's a critical goal for us. So we've been working at it now for over 2 years, and probably even closer to 3 to 4 years. But we do have, I'd say, the infrastructure now in terms of how we want the websites to be structured. And I haven't had a chance to discuss these with Superintendent Vaccaro in detail. She has seen them. But these are really based on what we, as individual school committee members, went out onto the web, looked at school sites across the Commonwealth, across the country, in fact, and brought up the sites that we thought were best, most intuitive, easiest to navigate. And there was a lot of similarity amongst them. And so that, having done that, it was very easy for us to put together that template that we are now proposing. Another aspect that we've done a fair amount of work with and will continue to do at the superintendent's, as the superintendent needs us, is to help either with the superintendent or any other member of the office staff that needs help in positioning an issue or a presentation, so that the communication is clearer and more succinct. Also, in the past year and a half, we worked very closely with the Port Pride Committee, developing communication around the building projects and helping to pass those, the debt exclusion. And we developed 2 websites for those projects, which are still functioning now and are now being updated by the School Building Committee. Our continuing goals: direction for the development of a new district and school website, and shepherd the move from public conversation to some kind of a larger forum type of basis where we can give the subjects that we've identified the time they need.
Thank you. Mr. Cole, Finance?
Sure.
Do you have anything to add, or
What's that?
whatever? We've talked a lot about budget and finance,
Well,
but can you frame
Just
the meeting?
going over, yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I didn't bring my thing that I submitted on the 18th, but I can pretty much go over it. We really pretty much met monthly since October 2012. We began that year determining and defining where we were standing, since Assistant Superintendent Farrell was leaving, and we needed to determine a new interim financial person. So one of the first things that we did was hire Dr. Jim Pacone. From January into March, we followed kind of what we're doing right now. We followed the budget deficit that we had going on at that time, and concerns that mirror what we talked about earlier today, except that we had, I'm just looking at the budget from 1/17/13. At that time, we had an available budget about $604,000. So very much the same types of things then as we're starting to do now. We also that year were involved with 2 attempts to hire a business manager. The first attempt yielded us 5 candidates. One candidate was marginally appropriate. This next round yielded us about 23 candidates. And when we came down to looking at the final four, none really were what we were looking for. So we went with a hybrid model with Ms. Lysick as the executive assistant of finance, and she does receive some timely supervision from Dr. Pacone. But we also, that period of time, we also structured our budget process last year, and we spent a lot of time in the late spring, early summer, discussing food service, because we saw the losses and we wanted to try to get out ahead of where things stood, or we anticipated things for the next year. And again, those issues continue. Overall, I would say that in terms of goals, again, we're basically doing the same things right now that we did last year, but in looking forward, I'd really like us to focus on some long-term plans so that as a school district, we can achieve what we ultimately want to for our schools. These long-term plans should be driven by school committee budget priorities, but also we need to be aware how increasingly difficult it is to ensure the financial means to achieve increasing expectations and mandates. All city departments collaborate to provide taxpayers with the level of service they have come to expect, and we oftentimes hear that from parents with respect to the schools. However, at the same time, we have to responsibly manage the tax burden. As the single largest cost center in the city, the schools have a special responsibility to consider its growing spending needs within the context of the financial constraints of the entire community. So I think therein lies the challenges. We want the best for our schools. I think we're going to get there by having long-term plans that we all can get behind and, push forward, that are based on our priorities as a school committee and ultimately based on what's best for the children and students in Newburyport.
Thank you, Mr. Cole. Any questions for Mr. Cole? As I said, we'll have a full-blown agenda item the next time we meet on subcommittees. I'm going to now turn the next section over to the superintendent for her report.
Okay. I'm going to stick with budget. I'm going to pass out I should have written draft on this, of a budget calendar, because I'm really looking for input at this point. I had talked to you about the possibility of doing, a retreat in either December or January, getting materials out to building principals in January, having and you're hearing my sort of priorities here and the way that I am used to doing things, but all suggestions are welcome at this point. I am used to meeting with the administrators and individually for them. They would be meeting with Mrs. Lysick and myself at the end of January. We'd be analyzing those budgets, and you'll see that there is a lot of back and forth here between the administrators and the superintendent, because it's a process. Remember that when you start the budget process, it's been my experience that at the building level, it's pie in the sky, and that's where things start. And I certainly want to have a building-based process where the teachers are involved and staff are involved in budget development. I think that's important for morale, and I think it's important for us to make sure we have the right supplies in our classrooms as well. So I do expect that there will be a lot of back and forth during that time. And that's why you'll see that the administrators really have several different times when they are going to be preparing the budget, having central office look at it, receive the budget back, perhaps with some changes to it, and bring it forward again. And my expectation would be that if you just take a look, and I have two to-be-determined dates in here, because I wasn't sure of the exact process that you'd used in the past. But when I present the budget to the school committee, how much time you're going to want to have to look at it, to make changes, to ask questions, to have administrators present. So I really need I want to have some conversation around that, and what has worked well in the past for you, or what things you would like to change based on some past experience as well.
Well, I think one of the things that has happened is that we've had the school councils, regional principals come and present.
The
their-
SIPs,
And their
we've had,
SIPs.
yeah.
And I see that the SIPs are sometimes tied into the budget process, but not always, and that they probably should be coming more often than just at the budget time to talk to us about their improvement plans. And, you know, progress of what they've done over the last 2 years that they've been working on them. But I still think it's helpful to have a team presentation that includes maybe a member of the school council plus you know, the different, you know, whoever the principal wants to bring with them to present, particularly if there's an area that's been identified as high priority for increase.
And has that been done, it's done at the individual building level, but also, I'm assuming that Angela would present curriculum,
Correct.
instruction, professional development, Steve will present?
Correct.
Okay, so.
And Dee presents, special
Yeah,
ed Dr. D,
okay.
yeah.
So how long a period of time are you looking at for those presentations? And you certainly could have more than one in an evening, I'm sure, but.
We've done 2 to 3.
Yeah.
But again, I think the agenda needs to be tailored so that, you know, we're not here till 11 o'clock dealing with, you know, trying to process budgets, which is, you know, it's difficult in a lot of other agenda items. So I think it depends on if it's fairly straightforward. If there's not going to be a lot of changes from the year before, then that could probably be done in a 15 to 20-minute period, as opposed to, you know, a school full building that has a lot of areas that need to be discussed.
I think the other thing that affects the timing period is how reliable the revenue figures are. And that is unfortunately not something that is dependent upon us, but rather when the state, and how much the state hints how likely the different versions are going to be. It becomes a bit of a crapshoot.
I think you're right, Nick.
That can truly affect us. And so I think one of the things that we need to talk about is some state funding assumptions as we go through to the budget, so that we have the time to review the individual site budgets, even though we might not have a final figure from the state.
Typically what's happened, though, is that we've always built our full budget, the city budget, and recommended the schools do the same based on House 1. The difficulty last year was that it was tied to the governor's request for the transportation bond bill and all those issues. And so that became a little more difficult in terms of actually coming in with what the number would be. But by doing that over the last 2 years, we've actually ended up with more money in Chapter 70 than anticipated, which I think was good.
Yeah, I agree.
So,
But that's what I'm thinking,
yeah.
that we need to, if it's House 1, that's great. But I think we need to make a conscious decision that that's what we're going to assume and work
Depending
within
on
those
what it is, I
parameters
think.
until we know better.
And that will be out the third week in June. There's also there has to be a public hearing in here on the
Okay.
budget.
Right.
When does House 1 typically get released?
22nd
Of
January.
January?
Mr.
It's-
Cole.
It's by regulation. I just can't remember.
Okay,
exactly.
but it's in January.
Yeah.
It's in January.
Yeah.
Third week of January, whatever, yeah. Okay.
But couldn't we take what we've received in the last 5 years for Chapter 70 and project from that? Because I think, frankly, we don't get a whole lot of Chapter 70 money. And I think, in the end, it really falls on, you know, what we can generate as a city and what the city appropriation can be. But that increment of money from Chapter 70, and I'll say it's less than 8%. But that can also be, if we're looking to make some improvements, that strategically can be a lot of money too. But I think that, I think we'd be wise to kind of project out what our experience has been, say, the last 5 years, and if we need to, make some recommendations to the superintendent as to what type of budget to draw up, we base it on some of those projections and
60, 90, 160. Those are the last 3 years. I can roughly.
60, 90, and then 160.
this is.
What I can remember off the top of my head in terms of the last 3
Okay.
years of chapter.
Okay.
The increases in chapter
That's the
70,
increases,
yeah.
okay. I'm talking about the baseline,
Okay.
what we get after we have to give up, what we need to give up to the charter school, Because that, I just think, I think we can build, I think that number's pretty consistent. I think we can build our budget. But again, like you say, that can be, something that we put backs or whatever, at that time of year.
Yeah, I think the most important thing is don't bring people here with these long, well, we know where we are. This is where we've been, at least since I've been mayor. Sorry. They come in with these wish lists, and it's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen, we know that.
However, Mayor, I think it is important that we in the community gets an idea for the vision that we are not fulfilling. Because that is a reflection of the kinds of things that they hear from parents and what is often best for student achievement. The practical side of me agrees with you completely. But I think we also, if we can't keep the flame alive of what it should be, and through these hearings include that, I think we'd be missing part of what we need to be doing. It doesn't need to be as long as it's been sometimes, I agree with that, or long-winded, it needs to be focused. But I would hate to see that aspect of it cut away.
Much like we've done on the technology committees for both, for Knockmullen and also for Braz, one of the things that we've done is they put down everything that they wanted, but then they prioritized it. And I think that we need to do the same thing. As a school committee and as a leadership team, I think we need to, pick what are our next 5 priorities. And if we can only do 1 and 2, then that's all we do, 1 and 2, and then you need to reevaluate that the following year and see if 3 now moved to number 1, and or are there things that are currently in the budget that we need to expand, like our STEM initiatives. I think we, the collective we, need to talk about what those priorities are, and from an educational standpoint, and then be realistic about what can we fund and what is the plan moving forward. And it may be, that in order to expand our STEM initiatives, we have a 3-year plan to do something, to do something every year. So,
Bruce.
Yeah, I just have a couple of points to make. I think that I appreciate this budget calendar. I think some of the tweaks that we're suggesting, I think will make it very good. I just sort of also wanted to, well, there were a couple of things. One is 2 years ago, they were not very well attended, but we had our hearings, usually we have a hearing for each school. We had them at the schools. We didn't do that last year. We sort of got talked out of it. I liked that experience, and I think with a little better marketing on our part, we will get an opportunity to hear from the community and hear from parents. And that's the piece here that I would like to see sort of fleshed out a little bit more, the community engagement piece. We, for years, have been making the assumption that the administrators are coming in based on the work the school councils have been doing and recommending. And, that's questionable how accurate that assumption has been on our part. So if we are reinvigorating the school councils and making them a part of this process, and they very much are a part of the process, they should be, I'd like to see that sort of articulated very clearly in how we're doing this, and, you know, whether that means we meet with them at their school before we get do the hearing, however that happens. So that's that community engagement piece, I think, that's really important. And also, when we went out there, and it was an idea of the mayor's, it really does honor that site-based management piece. A, B, it gets us into the buildings, talking to parents and kids if we can get them to attend. But whether or not they attend doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad idea. But I think we could do more work there. And I think I just want to follow up on a point that Nick said, and that is over the years I've seen these wish lists really change that people present us with until they are things like foreign language at the middle school, you know, more electives at the high school. And I hate to think of those things as never going to happen or as extravagant, because the wish lists are now so core, so basic to what we should be doing that it's painful to hear them. So nobody's coming in here asking for, you know, state-of-the-art television studios. You know, it's been years since anybody asked us for that. But they are coming in and saying things like, we really want foreign language at the middle school. We really want more electives for students. We want these STEM initiatives to be really robust. So, you know, I think I agree with Nick. I think that those wish lists, even though they're so fundamentally basic to what a good school system should be doing, unfortunately are what we need to aspire to, and we continue to remind ourselves of that and continue to allow the community to tell us that's what they want, so that we can somehow figure out how to get it back in place.
I have a combined meeting tomorrow with all of the elementary PTOs, and I'm hoping there's going to be a good turnout, but that's exactly one of the reasons that I want to talk with parents, is to get their feedback and to find out what their concerns are and what areas that they would like to see focused on as well. So that'll be part of our conversation tomorrow.
Great.
I also think, just for Angela as an aside, when we had the last two presentations by the coordinators, we mentioned Common Core materials, and I understand that last year you weren't ready for that, but if there are some things that we absolutely have to have in order to comply with the Common Core, I think we need to know that up front, if that's possible. Or if the park testing needs anything that, you know, when we get to technology piece of that or whatever. So I'd like to be made aware of that. The other thing, Superintendent, where in this calendar does the special education department run?
I had included her along with,
Okay, so not separated out,
Not separate, no.
because I know that, you know, in the years past, administrators had to come up to the central office several times. One to meet with the business manager, one to
No.
meet with the sped director, and it became very cumbersome.
There'll be two things that will be going on simultaneously. While I will meet with, you know, Angela individually and Barb D, along with Nancy, we'll meet. I will also be sharing that information with the entire leadership team, so that people are, you know, when we're going to focus on curriculum, instruction, and assessment, that's going to be a starting point. Angela and Nancy and I will be talking about that. But we'll then take that into the discussion at the leadership team. Here's the discussion that we had regarding curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Here is going to be the focus that the high school has. This is the plan for the middle school.
So you're not, you use the word silos, so you're not
Correct.
doing that. What you're saying is that all the administrators will be in the same room in that vetting process.
Yes.
And you can correct me, but I'm not sure that's always happened either, that everybody has a full understanding of, you know.
I think that's happened more often than not. I think last year was a unique experience in that we didn't have everybody involved in the vetting process all the time.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, over the years that I've been in central office, that is more than one.
Good. And you'll continue that, is
Yes.
I think what, you know, what we're saying. And I know Steve keeps bringing up at some point, either having a school committee member join one of those meetings, or
Less than a quorum, have a few people in one.
Yeah, I'm letting it, it just so that somehow we hear that rich conversation that goes on, and we're all invested in that.
Yeah, we can certainly do that.
However, you know. Any other questions about the timeline or the calendar?
Well, I want further clarification on one more thing.
Yep.
This was part of a presentation that was done last year. Let me just pass copies out. And the reason that I'm bringing this forward is not to remind you of what was discussed last year, but to ask you about the format. And is this your expectation for format as we are moving forward? Would you like to see something that's more streamlined?
Yes.
That was a quick answer, Nick.
Always like more streamlined.
One of the things I think, I'm looking at Brown School and I'm looking at salaries, current staff. That's something that Dr. Pacone added for each school, and I would like to see that continue. We never had that information before, and I just think it's easier to read it in this format, and I'm looking at it, and for instance, I know just by looking at this that there were 7.5 preschool aides. So I really liked that change that was made.
Okay.
And that was done for all the schools, and then at the high school, it was done for the subjects, so,
I like the columns going across.
well, that's, this,
Current,
that's.
budget.
Yeah, yes,
Requested.
yeah,
Change.
because that was new and we liked it. The other thing I'd like to ask is how often would you update the committee? Last year, we ran into a circumstance where, we received budget materials in March. We did a lot of talking in between, but we did not receive updated printed material until May 2nd, which was after our budget was passed.
Yeah, I know. Mrs. Lysick and I have already discussed the fact that we will keep a running record of where we are, cuts that have been made, and that copies of that would be provided to the school committee.
Okay. So you would update every time, and we would have that
Yes.
in writing.
And I think that in order to make sure that the school committee and the leadership team and the community are all aware of all of that, we need to have that conversation and have the actual evidence of that.
Yes.
So that we'll all be on the same page.
If I could just make one more suggestion. In the past and in the present, we've often had conversations with the community in which they've had some suggestions about ways to report out information or information they would like to see. I would really encourage you, as you're putting your format together, to convene a meeting. I know we've had several people, even sitting in the room, who would love to have that conversation with you about what the budget looks like and how it presents information. As you're doing that process, if you would just pull together a meeting of interested folks in the community, I think you'll get a lot of good feedback, really useful feedback.
Sort of like a forum, you mean?
Yeah, sort of a forum or
Budget
even just
forum.
a meeting. But that would have to do with the format and the kind of information that we're presenting out. So,
Well, one of the things that I am planning to do is I'm planning to put together a superintendent's advisory council after the first of the year. It would meet maybe quarterly, just from, representatives from the community, parents, maybe even
Good
staff
idea.
if they want to be on it. And budget would certainly be budget format would certainly be one of the topics.
that's a terrific idea.
It is.
Any other suggestions, or if you have them, just let me know as we move towards that, because I clearly want to be sure that the kind of information that you're looking for, we're putting together, and that it's going to make sense as we move forward.
If there's anything you can do about the revenue side of things, feel free.
Make that look
A
a
while.
little better.
Yeah.
Streamline the expenses.
Angela, can I ask you to very briefly just update people on DDMs? And just very briefly.
Sure. We are getting ready to roll out the whole concept of district determined measures to all of the staff this month. And so we did an introductory training for administrators today. We put together a preliminary timeline of how we see this roll out. And this year is just a pilot year, so it's not attached to the evaluation system this year. We'll be forming a DDM committee that's about building DDMs and the implementation of them. We'll be reconvening the evaluation subcommittee to talk about model contract language around district determined measures, which still has not been released from the state. We're still waiting for that. As soon as that's out, we'll be doing that. We're going to be training, doing an introductory training with the Curriculum Advisory Board tomorrow, who will be leading some of their professional learning communities in some of this work. And we will be presenting either at faculty meetings or at the release day on Thursday to do a preliminary training for the rest of the staff. So every staff person hears the same message at the same time. And really this year is about taking the time to experiment with some of our common assessments and see if they really meet the criteria around measuring student growth. And that's really what district determined measures are all about. So, you know, we've been doing a lot of work to put all of the elements in place to lead us to district determined measures. But we've really just been whispering what they've been called until now. And now we're getting ready to really talk about it and define them a little bit better and start to examine some of the assessment work that we've been putting together to see, could these be viable district determined measures for us? And really start to play with some of our assessments in a different way, with a different lens. And think about them differently as far as they apply to student growth.
All schools?
All schools, all content areas. So we did, you know, we're involved in a formalized pilot with the state, which I think I reported out earlier. And I do have I can bring to another meeting some of the information to show you around that. But those are 5 areas that we discussed earlier. But it really, you know, it is, it's in everyone's best interest for us to pilot at every level, to gather data for ourselves, to be able to say, you know, do we have the right kinds of assessment in place for this purpose, or do we need to make some adjustments and think about some of our assessments differently. So it's kind of exciting. And,
Now, will some of these be teacher-made?
most of ours will be teacher-made.
I think that's important because teachers have been involved in that process, and I know you've been moving in the last 2 years vis-a-vis common assessment anyway, so I'm hoping that it's a logical progression that isn't going to cause a lot of angst.
I'm hoping that too. I think that that's a great perspective, and we talked about that
We had
as
a
an
great meeting
administrative
today.
team today. Is you know, this is really, we're at a point in this process where it's time to just take some risk with it and have some really open conversations and look at what we currently have and assess it for this purpose. And I'm hoping so too. I'm hoping that all of the work that we've done thus far should transition nicely into this.
And I think the other way to look at this is that it's my belief that every teacher wants to ensure that their students are growing at an appropriate rate.
Absolutely.
Every single teacher wants to get better at that. So it's in my mind, it's more about the conversations that teachers will have around student growth that is going to be the very important work that they do. That's really where they're going to come up with the right measures. They're going to continue to look at that, and it keeps the focus where it should be, which is student growth. So
the other thing that's nice about it being based on student growth is it levels the playing field. We're really looking at where a child enters and if we're able to have an impact on them, on their growth towards performance and achievement from where they started as an individual, not compared to their peers, not compared to anything other than themselves.
And did you say for the first year, for the pilot year, it's not gonna be connected directly to the evaluation? So that should lend itself to more risk-taking as well, so I'm glad to hear that. Good.
I have one other handout that I want to give you. You know that the school and district profiles in terms of educator evaluation have been put out there on the website, and I wanted to just give you some information on what was there. First of all, you need to be aware that any of the blank areas that you see online, because you will see that, for example, one of the charts on Brown School is empty, and that's because the state has suppressed that data. And they have done it in cases wherever you see a blank, the state has suppressed that data because there were too few people involved. So it's the number of teachers, and they don't want to make it possible to identify. So you see that.
Is that true for not, I'm trying to find my
Yes,
page.
yes.
So those holes aren't that we did not submit?
No. It says, please note, some districts and school data is
Okay.
not shown due to confidentiality reasons. In instances where a cell is blank, ESC has suppressed data due to the number of staff evaluated, fewer than 6. All staff evaluated in the group received the same rating, or all the educators were evaluated and a single educator had a rating different from others. So that's right on there, and I wanted you to have that in your hands.
Yeah, it wasn't on the paper that we.
No,
that we-
it was not.
No, it wasn't.
So-
So this is good
And I really
information.
don't want to
This is what we got.
say anything more about this other than the leadership team will be having continued conversations around the evaluation process, around evidence, and we'll continue to look to have parity among and between the evaluators. So, but this was just informational only. And then lastly, I want to report to you on, or just update you on a
You've been
report.
busy.
I have been busy.
Killing trees.
A report that is going to Department of Elementary and Secondary Education regarding school councils, and I just wanted you to be aware, and you certainly don't need to go through and read all this, but what I have provided for you is the information on each individual, on school councils in general, and then on each of the individual schools and what the process that they went through this year. And
Excellent.
so you have a lot of data there, but this is where the councils are at this point, but I wanted to give you an update. I know this has been a concern in the past, and this is the information that's going, that will be going to the State Department.
And this is going to the State Department, why?
Because we had a complaint filed.
So they were very specific in telling you what information you had to gather, and you're comfortable
Yes.
with this?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's those 8 items that you see there. But that will give you an update on any of the school councils. The one area that's a little bit different this year that I want you to be aware of is that we have combined Brown and Bresnahan, because that made sense. It made sense to do that in preparation for the coming school year.
Yes, it does.
Let me just see if that's everything I believe it is. Oh, just, I didn't know if we wanted to set a retreat date in the budget, because it seems like it's right around the corner.
It is. Is everyone prepared to do that at this moment? Yes? Okay. Mayor, is the city council voting on the $161,000 on Monday, the 9th? So we will know, so.
You wanna look in January? Is that when you want to look?
Is this for the purpose of this year's budget, next year's budget, or both?
I think it's probably both.
And are we looking for a morning?
I mean, I don't know what you've done in the past in terms of a budget retreat.
Well, we've had whole day retreats, and we've had half day, so I guess I'm gonna ask the committee members what they feel. And the purpose of this would be the first list here, school committee education retreat, set priorities and parameters. That's what the goal would be.
Sounds like there's some other subjects that would be included in that period as well, in addition to budget, though. Is that, we talked about direction that we want to take with committees, for example.
Right.
We've talked about,
It's a governance model.
Yep.
our standards, our internal standards of collaboration and behavior, whatever they're called. That kind of stuff.
Well, January 6th at 10 is the inauguration, just so that you all should get that in your calendars.
January 6th. I guess you expect us to be there.
Oh, I don't have a calendar that goes that far, sorry. I bought it today. It's right here.
Donna, what time does that start?
10.
10, okay.
See, look, hot off the press.
Monday the 6th. Yes.
And that's usually our working meeting for our first January meeting. We don't usually have a meeting that night.
Okay.
So that wouldn't be a school committee meeting night per se, but what are people's druthers during the day, evening, whole day, Saturday, during the week?
The nature of the work that needs to be done, I would hope that we are able to find time that we can focus during the day and not get exhausted at work all day.
So does that preclude a weekday then?
Not
Are we looking
necessarily.
at Saturday or?
For something like this, I'd be willing to take a day vacation. Right? That's what it is.
How does the rest of the committee feel about that? I don't know.
Okay.
Audrey's got vacation earned.
Yeah, depending on the day, I could take a day off.
Michael?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true, depending on the day. I would prefer a Saturday, but it's time that.
We do need
I
it.
can do Saturdays too. It's fine by me.
Doesn't matter to me, so.
Somebody make a motion.
So we start with
Saturday the 11th?
Saturday the 11th, yeah.
Sounds good to me. I don't know, I'm just asking. I'm trying to move this along, Mrs. Kennedy.
I move that we schedule the school retreat for Saturday, the 11th of
I have a
January.
conference I have to be at.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Just
I
jumped out at me.
rescind my motion.
I'm sorry, it just
Immediately.
jumped, I kept looking at it and thinking something's not right. That's what's not.
Saturday the 18th.
I could do the 18th.
Is that a holiday? Is that coming into the holiday?
weekend.
Holiday.
Martin Luther
That's
King is
holiday.
20.
MLK.
20th.
And I'm getting, I don't want to go further and further, I guess, away. I mean,
Yeah,
What about January 4th?
I have a little bit of work to do that weekend.
oh, got a speech to write?
Decorate the
Oh,
whole
I was
hall,
thinking it was,
plan. It's,
I was thinking it was the week before.
sorry.
Bad idea. Sorry.
Yeah, I know that I haven't plugged anything in, but Friday the 10th is a yawning open chasm for me right now. I'm sure I haven't put anything in, but that's a day I could do it if we went with a weekday. I agree about not pushing it very far into
I don't
January.
think we need to. I really don't think that's a good idea. Does anybody want to entertain anything in December?
No.
Oh, you answered me, excellent. Let's go back to January then.
So, what
So
about
how
the
was
5th?
Friday the 10th?
Friday the 10th.
It's fine by me.
Mike?
Matthew's birthday.
No. I'll be away at a conference.
You're still away at the conference. How many conferences are you
10th,
going to?
11th, and 12th.
You're gonna learn a lot of stuff.
Oh, sorry.
All right.
Sorry. I just isn't a good.
What about the 9th?
It's a Thursday.
Thursdays are really hard for me.
Going back.
What about the 17th?
Is any thought to doing like 2 evenings back to back, or a day in between? I don't know. I think if we're looking to get some work done or get some things done, maybe if we break it up, because it seems like we're having trouble getting a whole day here. Just a thought.
It looks like it's possible for me.
What is the earliest?
Sending a doodle?
Pardon me?
What about sending a doodle? You know, where you put
Pick some
in
dates.
all of your dates, the possible dates, and then everybody checks and the one that's most common.
If we did do a nighttime, what time would we be able to begin?
Depends on the night, depends on the meetings, depends on.
Well, I'm looking at, I'm
6, I could be there by 6 to
I'm just
6:30.
looking at people's, the schedule, that's all.
6 o'clock.
6.
It's
Six.
ideally earliest.
So 6 to what? If you,
Midnight, I have midnight curfew, so.
no, but that's what I mean, Steve, I'm trying to figure out if we did 2 of those, would it be 6 to 9, 6 to 9, and does that give us enough
I
time?
mean, whatever, I'm just trying to think of some other ways, because
No, I
it
understand
doesn't
that.
seem like we're getting
That's
a
why-
whole day, and then we're
right.
getting toward February, so.
No, we can't do that.
What I'm also thinking is structure it so that you got 2 days, and maybe get a couple days in between if, you can build some collaboration in on that too. You can get people working together on some stuff. I don't know, I'm just trying to suggest some things that, might give it a little different perspective.
I'm just trying to get a frame for the doodle, okay?
I
I'm
could
just
do-
trying to, that's all.
At this point, I could do the 7th and the 9th.
7th and 9th.
Two 3-hour blocks.
2 nights, right?
6 to 9.
Yeah, 6 to 9.
I can do that. 7th and 9th.
Yep, that works for me.
All right, Mayor?
Have Chartwells do something for us.
Oh,
Yeah.
chicken burgers and patties or something?
Apples.
Apples.
Apples, I got apples. Anyone want apples?
Applesauce, I hear, is
How do you
a
like them
rare
apples?
commodity too, so we could use that. All right.
I'll make it work.
Okay. So Tuesday, the January 7th, and Thursday, January 9th, from 6 to 9, place to be determined. We will be retreating. We'll discuss food later.
We can have Angela work up some PDPs for us.
There you go.
No, I hear she's a good cook. Never mind the PDPs, we'll have dinner.
Do you need a motion, Ms. Swede?
I'm not sure we do. Do we?
That's just a scheduling thing.
Schedules are called at the pleasure of the chair.
But thank you. All right, where are we? Is your superintendent's
Done.
report done? Let's hear a motion to adjourn.
So
Actually-
moved.
Oh, come on.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes. Yeah, we went over a lot of stuff tonight, and I know there's not very many people here, but I did want to consider a second round of public comment, if people are interested.
I'm not, I think, given the late hour, and is there anybody that has a burning issue out there? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Meeting's adjourned.